Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In today's episode, roommate thought she was sneaky, ended up owing me $400 and got suspended. After that, had my half-brother removed from the will after he stole money from our father with Alzheimer's. Finally, become the worst neighbor and HOA board member ever, lose your job and HOA. Before we get into today's episode, remember to subscribe so you never miss another episode of r/ProRevenge. Roommate thought she was sneaky, ended up owing me $400 and got suspended. This is a long one. Too long, didn't read as below. So, this happened my second semester dorming at my college campus. I had met my roommate at orientation and could kind of already tell she was going to be a pain in my ass. And I was right about that. I had planned on moving rooms to be closer to some friends the next semester. But, let me get to the story that led to my revenge. On our campus you had to pay for meals using your student ID, which had a certain amount of money on it each semester. You could also use an app that you put your name and ID info into and it makes it easier to pay. But, the name and ID must match for it to work, which will be important later. Any funds from the fall semester would roll over into the spring. But, then at the end of spring it would just expire. Because of this, and, because I only ate once or two a day, I had a ton saved up on my card. My roommate on the other hand, did not. So, I offered to pay for some of her meals from time to time in trade of her picking up the food for us. Which involved her using my card twice in person and then she'd return it. Then, one day, I noticed on my app that my card was being charged even when I was not ordering food. And not just a meal, like a meal for several people. This meant that whoever was ordering, I wonder who, either had to have stolen my ID card, which I had in my pocket when I got the charge, or was impersonating my info in the app, which are both big no-nos on my campus. I was quick to put 2 and 2 together and was pretty pissed. I was initially going to confront her on it, but decided to formulate a plan instead. That day I went and ordered a second ID card for $25 to use for later, as it took a couple of weeks to get the new one. I let her charge several things to my card over a good 2 weeks. For her and her friends. And she wasn't very good at hiding it either, as they would come to our dorm and eat, while I just screenshot and sent emails to the support team of the app about the charges, knowing nothing would get done until I contacted someone in person. And one day it got even better, as you can buy groceries with the card off campus as well. She decided to pay for alcohol with my card, which doesn't get pinged as an issue on my card due to me being over 21, but she was only 19. Not sure how she got it, but it was just the thing to finally act on my plan. I put my best sad face on and contacted the head of campus living and head of my dorm about the charges on my account. I dropped some hints that it could be my roommate and mentioned I got a new ID and asked what I should do. I was told to order a new card and once I got it, to deactivate my current ID and use the new one for purchases now, making my old ID have a balance of $0 and also to ping if someone uses it to buy anything. They also told me they would be visiting my dorm to discuss the issue with my roommate. I accepted that and waited. They sent the confirmation email that they would be visiting and I just decided to add more fuel to the fire. My roommate was groaning about not having the funds for food in front of me in our dorm. I told her I really couldn't help her as I was running low on funds and she kind of just laughed it off and left the room to probably go use my old ID. I deactivated my first card right after she left and surprise surprise she used my info to pay. Except when she tried to pay for her and her friends this time, it was declined and it pinged that my ID was used. Campus security was called and she was escorted back to our dorm. Pretty much perfect timing for our meeting with campus living. She was scared shitless when they came to the dorm to talk and look through her stuff. On her phone, still logged into the app, was my ID information and name. And in her dorm closet was a half-full bottle of cheap vodka. And on my phone was a screenshot of said unauthorized vodka purchase. In the end she was forced to pay me back all the funds she used, in cash, reported for underage drinking, which automatically suspends you from campus living for at least a year, and would have on her record that she performed identity theft, which I also could have charged her for out of school. In the end, I got to have my own dorm for the remainder of that semester and even part of the semester after, because it wasn't put as an available room for new dormers. I did get all my money back from her parents, who were so embarrassed and apologized profusely. And when she did eventually come back to campus, no one wanted to dorm with her because they knew she had stolen her roommate's id. I think in the end she rented off campus. Had my half-brother removed from the will after he stole money from our father with Alzheimer's. Shortly after my father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, my formerly estranged half-brother quit his job and moved in to help take care of my dad. Though there really wasn't enough money, it was agreed to pay him around $300 a week to make up for his missing income. During this time, my half-brother abruptly acquired durable power of attorney and usurped medical and financial. My mother and father had separate financial leaves, decisions. Several documents relating to my dad's pension, which were now my half-brother's responsibility, were not turned in on time, resulting in my dad missing out on a one-time payout of $8,000 and lowering his pension payout by $300. No. My half-brother then cleaned out my dad's remaining savings, about $3,000, not discover until about a month later. 6 days later, our father hung himself in the basement. My dad left all of his insurance money and belongings to my mother. Us children were left with only sentimental items. My half-brother was visibly upset and shaking when the will was read. He acknowledged that my mother was receiving everything and left. About a month later we discovered the missing money. Though he broke no laws, because he had power of attorney, we insisted he pay it back, even offered to let him make payments over a 2-year period. He refused and we have been no contact for 2 years now. Little did he know that he was in my mom's, his stepmother's, will. He would receive half of what is currently a $250,000 estate. I suggested to my mother that she remove him from the will. She did and I am now the sole beneficiary. He stole $3,000 now only to lose out on $125,000 later. Become the worst neighbor and HOA board member ever? Lose your job and HOA. Let me start by saying never purchase a house in a HOA. It is a complete mess that should be regulated and illegal. If I knew about HOAs when I bought my first home, I would have never purchased my first home in one. Me and my wife purchased our first home when we were 24 and 25. We spent months looking at houses and areas and tried to find a forever home in a good district for potential future kids, etc. We finally found a perfect one at a decent price. At first everything was great, super nice neighborhood and decent neighbors. Well, a few months after buying the house we rented an RV to go on a trip and parked it in the driveway for the 3 days leading up to the trip to pack it and for me to learn how half the things in it worked. Well, this is when we learned that HOAs are absolutely crazy and our neighbor was on the board of our local HOA. Within an hour of it being parked he got home and stormed over demanding we remove it from his neighborhood or he would have it towed and fine us for every hour it was there. Myself, being the average and normal person, told him kindly to frick off and get out of my driveway and told him if he returns I'll call the cops, because he was screaming like a madman inches from my face. About 3 hours later a big rig tow truck shows up and he walked up like he was a god and handed me a plain envelope with a letter inside that pretty much said, by order of the HOA this RV is to be towed and a fine of $1,500 for violating their rules. While Mr. Crazy board member might not listen to reason, the tow truck guy they found wasn't so fond of entering my driveway and towing a vehicle when I told him if he comes on the property I'll call the cops. Once the tow truck driver decided he's done being involved in this mess and left, neighbor goes even more crazy and storms off. I call my friend to get his dad's number, because he is an attorney, to ask him about this insane letter and fine I just received and to ask him some legal advice. After speaking to his father he told me to come down, write him a $500 check and bring along all the papers I received when purchasing the home and the current letter I just received. The next day he had a very friendly letter sent to my neighbor and the HOA board, basically telling my neighbor to frick himself in legal terms and to leave us and our property alone. I then continued to receive fines of $1,500 a day in plain envelopes not postmarked stuffed into my mailbox that I then turned over to my friend's father, and each time he sent another set of letters and contacted USPS to report the incidents. Turns out putting mail into people's mailbox is a crime. Who knew? Well, we decide to go on our week-long trip across the state and mildly forget about it all. Kind of upset I had to spend $500 to have an attorney send letters, but that's what they do. Fast forward to us returning from the trip and the RV back in our driveway for 2 days so we can unload, clean, then return it. Again, each day more envelopes stuffed into our mailbox and more visits to our attorney and more letters sent and more incidents reported to USPS. Well, here's where the fun really begins. Turns out Mr. Crazy finally gives me a summons to appear before the board. My attorney said this is crazy illegal because what they've done is use what looks like an actual legal document improperly to summon me to the board. Another $500 to the attorney and we wait for the date they made, a Tuesday at 10 AM. They attempt to keep my attorney out of the room on some board privacy rule, but quickly shut the hell up when he begins going over their own rules that they are violating to them. Deep in this HOA book are some very nicely worded rules and stuff outlining about what makes board members ineligible, and how they cannot serve if they commit certain infractions. Well, guess what Mr. Crazy Neighbor has done? Committed several of them, all documented. Also, the cherry on top is that if 51% of the HOA members vote to dissolve the HOA, it all goes away. Well, it happens my wife worked part-time from home during this mess and had all the free time in the world to begin a disband the HOA campaign. Over the course of the next 2 months she went around and really began to get to know our neighborhood really well. Turns out a lot of people dislike the HOA and the power-hungry seniors who act like dictators that run it. The HOA attempted to stall everything by holding no meetings, another HOA violation, and began their own campaign trying to change HOA rules to keep from being ousted, and a fairly racist flyer and letter to everyone explaining the dangers of not having an HOA and all the bad people, blacks and Mexicans, that will move in and take over / sell drugs, etc. That our houses would become much less valuable and everything else they could try. Turns out it's extremely fun to use someone's own rules against them. The neighborhood even started a fund that paid us back what it cost us to get the attorney started and the continued costs he had. A few weeks after their failed fear campaign and being forced to hold a meeting, a vote was called by using their own rules. The HOA was no more and all remaining funds were to be dispersed back to the homeowners and members equally. This never happened. Turns out somehow the HOA used all their funds in the course of the last 2 months. About half the former board members sold their homes and moved, including Mr. Crazy Neighbor. I've spent 3 hours trying to find old news articles, because it was reported on mostly due to the racist letters by the HOA, but it was too long ago to find anything. Moral of the whole mess: don't buy a home in a HOA, and if you do, plan to hire an attorney.